Hello and welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. I have recently returned from the UK Games Expo 2024, which was absolutely great. I got to meet Sir Livingston, Alessio Cavatore, Duncan Rhodes, Eric Lang and Tom Greenway, and I got to be there for the full review of Jungles of Delthrak, the first Talisman expansion, Mass Effect and more. It's a lot to process, so over the next couple of videos I'm going to catalogue all the interesting little snippets of information I gathered, some of which may now be common knowledge, but certainly weren't to me at the time. And today I thought I would focus specifically on HeroQuest Jungles of Delthrak. As some of you may know, I have already posted some raw footage of the reveal, and I have been posting a lot of photographs on Instagram. Since then, a lot of photographs and videos shared by those of us who were there have been doing the rounds online, and many people have already dissected them, but after the reveal I hung around at the booth, spoke to all the representatives, took some extra photos and found out some information that some people may not have heard, like exactly how the branch and quest system works and what all those monster keywords mean. That being the case, I don't plan on retreading a lot of ground that others have covered, besides I want to have something left to talk about when I finally get a copy to play, but let's go over some of the most exciting stuff and maybe, hopefully, I can share some information you haven't heard yet. Number 1, the board and terrain. No, we aren't getting a new board. We are getting new double-sided tiles though. 2 punch boards including at least 4 larger double-sided overlays, some inside and some outside locations. One that looks like a disgusting nest. I think it's a cocoon that will spawn centipede spawnlings. The largest tile looks like it may show the same location on each side, but on one side it's day and on the other it's night. Very pretty and something completely different. We are also getting quite a few different smaller tokens and overlays, spiderwebs, vines, dinosaur bones, thematic barriers and blockages. There are 3 types of thematic hindering terrain that slow movement: sand, web and jungle. The rules say they cost 2 movement points to traverse, which is wording I don't like as it's subject to debate, but I think the theory is 2 movement points to enter the space, 1 as normal to leave the space. There are also cocoons you can smash open, which may reveal items or may reveal horrible bitey death. There were base game tiles like secret doors and rock piles in use during the demos at the booth, but I think those may have come from the core set. I didn't see anything like that on the punch boards. Of course, they may be on the reverse of other tiles. The most interesting new terrain is in the form of miniatures, the water pools, crystal clusters and bonfires. These are neat because the water pool miniatures represent a pool of healing water, and if you search in a room with a pool, you regain 1 body point instead of drawing a card. But if you place a crystal or bonfire miniature on top of the pool miniature, then it completely changes the terrain type. The crystals channel dread. Any monster casting channel dread next to the crystals will add 1 to their roll result. Crystals can be destroyed, they have 6 body points. The bonfires don't block line of sight, but if you move through them you roll a dice and take 1 damage on the roll of a skull. Walking through fire, not a great plan. And I know inquiring minds would like to know, yes, the translucent bonfire and crystal minis are hollow, so you can put coloured lights inside them if you want to. Ultimately, from everything I saw and watching demos in action, it's still going to feel like you are trudging around the HeroQuest board, but there will be some aesthetic and mechanical changes. Number 2, the heroes. This is one of those rare and wonderful times when I can say I was right. The cover art does indeed show 1 dwarf and 1 human, as I predicted earlier, but I was still wrong, because they represent 2 different hero classes. As we all know by now, we get male and female dwarf explorers, and male and female human berserkers. At first blush, these appear to be upgrades of the dwarf and barbarian from the core set, but they are actually different. Whether they are balanced different is another matter. So the dwarf explorer is attack 2, defend 2, body 5, mind 5, and starts with the hand axe, which can be thrown but is subsequently lost. They can disarm traps exactly like the dwarf, but they cannot wear any metal armour, which limits their ability to increase their defense stat. By comparison, the original dwarf is attack 2, defend 2, body 7, mind 3, and starts with the short sword. So our explorer gets a slightly better weapon and gains 2 mind points, but loses 2 body points and loses access to metal armour, making them quite a lot squishier. However, our explorer also gets 3 abilities. Treasure Hunter grants an additional 25 gold every time a card from the treasure deck would award the explorer gold coins. Now that's tricksy wording. What about cards like the Gem, that don't award you gold coins, but items worth a certain amount of gold coins and are therefore indistinguishable from gold coins? Debatable, I would say. Danger Sense is incredibly good. Once per turn, if you draw a hazard card from the treasure deck, you can return it to the bottom of the deck and draw again. Trapsmith is also once per turn, and when you move onto a square adjacent to one or more traps, Zargon must warn you. The trap tiles are not placed and the traps are still considered to be hidden and unsprung. I'm not sure how that interacts with traps you can't reveal by searching, like the wandering monster traps. I would assume those aren't announced, but I guess that's for Zargon to figure out. Then we have our Berserker. Stats are attack 3, defend 2, body 7, mind 2, starts with the broadsword. The original Barbarian is almost the same, except he starts with 8 body points. The Berserker also gets 3 skills, which we will look at momentarily, so the question is, why would you pick the Barbarian? The answer is because, in addition to having less body points, the Berserker has one massive, absolutely huge disadvantage. They won't use ranged weapons. No crossbow for the Berserker. To be honest, I think they should also have added no spell scrolls, but not being able to fire a crossbow or throw an axe or dagger is a considerable hindrance. The question is, are the Berserker's abilities worth losing 1 body point and access to ranged weapons, especially as all the skills are 1 use only? Enrage is cool, lose up to 2 body points when making an attack, add 1 dice for each body point lost. Retaliation only works if the Berserker has 5 or fewer body points. It allows an immediate counterattack on an adjacent enemy that has just damaged the Berserker. Frenzy can only be used if you have 3 or fewer body points. It lets the Berserker use an action to attack all adjacent and diagonally adjacent enemies, which is pretty damn good. So what we have ended up with is a Dwarf class hero who will most likely race ahead of the team and spend a lot of action searching, and a Barbarian class hero who will race into close combat and will benefit from taking damage. In both cases, you are losing something important that the original heroes had, armor and ranged weapons, and you are gaining more complex rules and playing characters who are more likely to suffer injuries. That being the case, I think all of these heroes earn their place in different ways, and for younger players or more casual gamers, the more simple, unrestricted original heroes who are a little bit tankier are probably still the better option. Number 3, Allies. We get 2 new allies, the Saberfang and the Raptor. I checked on these and there is no way to earn these characters during the game. They don't unlock under specific circumstances, they cannot be summoned, they are not rewards for completing certain quests, they are not actually part of the quest storyline. They use the animal ally rules we already know. They will fill the slot of a hero if you are playing with less than 4 heroes. And it's nice that all of our animal allies have different benefits. The Saberfang and the Wolf can attack diagonally, but the Wolf has more attack while the Kitty has more defense. The Raptor may split its movement, moving, attacking, then moving again, and can also open doors, because, you know, Jurassic Park references are cool. Number 4, Monsters. There are 10 enemy types in total: Goblin Archers and Skeleton Archers, then Skull Blights, which are undead brutes, Blight Weavers, which are cultists spreading dread blight through the forest, Blight Crawlers, which are the spiders with paralysing venom, Serpents, also venomous, the Raptors, who are clever girls, Giant Apes, which are very angry, Spawnlings in 3 delicious flavours, Serpent, Blight Crawler and Centipede, and that sneaky Goblin Warlock. Of those enemies, the Blightweaver Cultists, Goblin Archers and Skeleton Archers, 8 miniatures total, are repeats from other expansions. Understandable, but it does highlight the weakness inherent in Avalon Hill's desire to ensure that each expansion is playable even if you only have the core set. All 3 of the large enemies cover 2 spaces, and they can all attack diagonally, giving them a 10-space field of death around them. The Giant Ape is not, in fact, Gorilla Grodd. The rep could tell me it's a very feral, aggressive enemy, not an intelligent foe. The ranged goblins and skeletons in this expansion are the same as the ones from Against the Ogre Horde. You can replace regular enemies with ranged versions of those enemies whenever you like. There are of course enemies that cast spells, that's the Blightweavers and the Goblin Warlock, and there will be some multi-phase enemies. The multi-phase rules were introduced in Against the Ogre Horde and were severely underutilised. I'm glad to see them used here because they do have the potential to make boss fights much more cinematic and dynamic. I hope they are put to better use to make more memorable confrontations. And what about those keywords? The first is spawn. Any monster with the spawn keyword gets a special action at the end of each hero's turn. They can either create one new spawnling on an adjacent space, or move all of the spawnlings of its type. If a spawnling moves onto a hero's space, it's removed from the board and placed on the hero's character card. If a hero ends a turn with spawnlings on their card, they take 1 body point of damage for each spawnling. The damage cannot be blocked or ignored. Additionally, spawnlings don't block line of sight because they are so small. The second keyword is venomous. Characters taking damage from a venomous creature may be paralysed. They roll 1 red dice. On a 5 or 6 they resist the venom, otherwise you place a venom token on their character sheet and they are paralysed. While paralysed they are unable to take their movement but still perform actions. The effects end at the end of their next turn. The third keyword is agile. Monsters like the Great Ape can move through hindering terrain, characters, and all furniture as if it wasn't there. 4 is Clever Tactician. Monsters with this rule can split their movement, allowing for hit and run tactics. They also roll 1 additional attack dice when targeting a hero who is adjacent to or diagonal to another monster. Personally, I think those 2 rules should have been split up so the extra attack dice were applied under the keyword mob or teamwork. The 5th keyword is Entangling Roots. If a hero enters a square adjacent to a monster with this ability, their movement immediately ends. I would have called this ability Ensnare or something, so it could be reused in the future for a monster that doesn't have roots. Good to finally see these kinds of movement hindering rules in place in HeroQuest though. Overall, this all looks really good. Lots of new monster variety, and lots of monsters with skills that are going to give the heroes new things to think about, which is exactly what we need at this point. Excellent. Number 5, the quest. We all know by now the quest branches. For the first time you aren't just going to play through a series of adventures in a fixed order. I asked for some more information about this from the reps, and this is what I got. The branching is nothing to do with succeeding or failing. It's not a case of if you win go here, if you lose go here. It's a decision point that comes up when certain quests are completed. For example, you may find a stranger in a quest. At the end of the quest, you may choose to help them, or you may choose to press on with your own investigations. This would cause your path to branch. There are 3 paths in the adventure, A, B and C. Each path has its own final conclusion, and it seems to be that your decisions can cause you to move back and forth between the 3 paths. So it isn't a case that one decision at the start will decide the rest of the course of your journey. The rep also seemed to imply that depending on the path you take, you could play up to 14 of the 16 quests in one playthrough. Additionally, there was a suggestion that earlier decisions may impact later choices. For example, if you chose to help someone earlier, they may show up again in a later quest for you. Now, do bear in mind this is information I got from the rep. I didn't look at all the quests and I didn't take notes on specific decision points, so I am being a little bit vague here, and I do apologise if any of this is inaccurate in any way. Regardless, I think it's enough to know that this sounds interesting, and it sounds like you could play the campaign multiple times getting different endings, but also taking different branching routes to get to an ending you have already seen before. If this is received well in the community, I can see Avalon Hill doing it again for all future brand new expansions. And I think I will leave it there for now. As I said, I don't want to retread the ground that lots of others have already covered. You don't need me to sit here and read through all the stats of every monster at this stage. And besides, I don't want to burn myself out too much now and leave myself with nothing to say when the quest pack hits retail. So I will sign off by saying, I think everything looks great and I am really excited about this pack. I mean, who isn't excited about giant apes and spiders? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, feel free to ask any questions, I will answer what I can, and thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone, bye bye.